Hey friends, Brad here. I'm going to show you how to slice up and export the assets out of a Photoshop document and then code them up in HTML and CSS, or more specifically HTML5 and CSS3. So at this point in our course, we know about visual design, we know about web design, we know how to use Photoshop, how to design sites, graphics, even business cards in Photoshop. And then we've also learned HTML, CSS, HTML5, CSS3, a whole bunch of stuff. And at this point, we want to know how to fuse the two together because there is a connection between the two. A lot of the time, there's a lot of web developers and web designers out there who design in the browser. And that means that they literally just code without actually designing in Photoshop. And I do that sometimes when I'm designing a project. I'll literally just create it. I'll wireframe and then I'll just go straight into coding and just use CSS to create what I want. And, maybe use Photoshop to create some background graphics or textures or so on and so forth. But a lot of the time, what will happen in a web design process is there is a web designer who actually dedicates time and creates a valuable design in Photoshop. And as web developers, it's our job to be able to accurately export and create a living, breathing HTML, CSS version of that design. And just a pro tip, don't piss off a designer by botching their design when you're coding it. And believe me, I've been on both ends of the table here. I've designed stuff and I've also worked with designers. In fact, I work with designers more than I design myself. And if you don't get their designs right, they get a little upset. So it's in your best interest to get it right the first time to keep them happy. And so I want to show you how to take your Photoshop design and convert it into HTML, CSS as accurately as possible. And so here we are. We have a design here. In the course, we did design this. We actually designed this together, this minimal landing page for beach toys. And it's a very simple site, but there are a lot of things here that we'll have to use our skills in HTML and CSS to create. We've got our logo here, we've got a navigation, we've got kind of a centered kind of tagline here, we've got a big full screen background image, we've got a button here, and just some copyright in the bottom. And it's pretty straightforward. And that's why I use this as an example so I can get you up and running so you can actually get moving on throughout the course. And so what I did here is, you should have this Photoshop document already, but if you don't, I'll provide it as a download in this lecture. And I went and took the liberty to create a folder on my desktop called Minimal Site, and I went and added an image folder, or IMG, instead of images. You could call it whatever you want, but I called it IMG. And I went and added an index.html file with some basic structure here, and I'll get to this in a moment. Normalize.css, we've been using that to normalize our styles within the browser. And a basic style sheet with nothing in it yet. In the index folder, I've had that basic structure, normalize, custom CSS, and this is new, meta description. This is for search engines. And there are a number of meta tags you can use, but pretty much the most important basic one would be the description, so that search engines can actually display search result text in your search result. And so Google will just find, or other search engines will find text on your site and display it as the description of the link. But if you want to customize that, you could do that simply just by adding a description. You might want to keep it under, 200 characters or 180 characters, whatever it is. Keep it simple. Keep it good. And then we've got our Internet Explorer conditional comment to whip it into shape. Okay, so what I did here is I went and took the liberty to create a basic HTML5 structure here, and you can feel free to copy it right now. We got our header with some navigation in there. We've got a section in the center with a level 1 heading and an A tag that we'll use for the button, and then a footer. So, nice and simple. Let's get to it. So, go back to your Photoshop document here, and what we want to do first is export the graphics that we cannot create in CSS. Now you might argue we can create this in CSS, this logo, and yes, you're right, we can create this in CSS3 using border radius, 1 pixel white border, And we just use the, I believe this font is, let's find out, Courier. And so, yeah, a lot of, it's basically a monospace font, and you could use that, and you create that in CSS, and that's cool. But it's not the point of this lecture. We're going to take the assets out of here and get them prepped for web development. So what you want to do is you want to be able to select that layer. We need that logo. We need to add it to an images folder. So I'm going to right click on this, and it will give me a little window here, a little drop down menu that I can choose, the layer. And so I'm just going to choose circle so it can navigate me over here in my layers panel. I could have also just done this because I know that this is the logo. And there are a number of things that you can do. Historically in Photoshop, you literally would, it's called slicing, and you'd use the slice tool. It's over here. Slice tool, and it worked a lot when a lot of the time you'd actually have a lot of graphics that you need to export out of a document. So for example, you'd make a selection. It kind of clips to the graphic here. It has a selection, and let's say there's that one, and we want to also do the background here like that. I don't know, say you also wanted to, grab this button. Whoops. Something like this. Just something like this, and you can resize it and do all that fancy stuff. And then basically what you do, you'd call it a day, you'd go File, Save for Web, and then it already knows, hey, we've got a bunch of slices here. You can see, what it's looking for. And then you can go ahead and hit Save. Choose the folder you want to save it down to, and hit Save, and I'll show you why it's good and why it's not. So we've got an images folder here that it generated, and it created a bunch of files here, which is kind of cool. It seems like it did all the work for us, and kind of it did. The slicing is kind of weird because it just takes whatever is within those boxes, and it's kind of inaccurate and kind of annoying. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I don't like doing this anyway, so I'm not a big proponent of it. You see how it's kind of messed up? We got our button, and we should have we should have had the logo, but you see what I mean? It's kind of unreliable, so I don't like that method. But that's why it's called slicing. Just kind of a little bit of a history on Photoshop there. So anyway, basically what we want to do here is we want to grab the we want to grab this logo. So I'm just going to use my rectangular selection here, rectangular marquee tool. Just make a big wide selection around it. And my preferred method is to isolate the layer so that it's the only thing displaying with no background or anything. And the way you can do that, so you can turn a layer on and off, or you could turn all the other layers off like that. But there's a quick way to do that. Click and hold the Option or Alt key on your keyboard, and then click a layer, the eyeball icon here, and that will toggle all other layers off. And then you could do the same, click and hold Alt or Option, and then click that layer, and then it will reappear. So what I do there is toggle everything off. It's still selecting around the graphic here. And then I go Edit, Copy Merged. And that just copies everything within the selection, whatever is in view. And then I'm going to turn that back on so I don't forget. And then I'm going to create a new file, a new Photoshop file. It'll already have its size in the settings here, so that all you have to do is go Command V or Edit Paste, and it's there. I'm just going to toggle this background off, and you can see it's there. So I'm just going to delete this background actually, double click, and then delete key. So here we have our logo. File, Save for Web. And I'm going to save this as a PNG because it has a transparent background. There it is. Go ahead and hit Save. And in our IMG folder, in our minimal website folder here on the desktop, I'm going to say logo.png. There we go. Close that. I don't need that layer anymore, that file. And the only other thing I really need now is the background. So I'm just going to select everything, or you can just say Command A. And I am going to find that background, isolate it, Alt Option, whatever the key is for you in Windows or Mac. Click and hold the Option key. Click on the layer, and everything's gone except for the one you want. Edit, Copy Merged, and then isolate, put everything back again. New Photoshop document. It's maintained its height and width because it's copied to the clipboard. Command V for paste. There it is. Now we're just going to go and edit our file. Sorry, not save as. We're going to do save for web. Save for web lets us use better presets here for web ready images. And we're just going to use a JPEG for this. And let's see, high quality, does that look good enough? Let's zoom out. That looks good to me. 101K, it's good. Save. I'm just going to save this as background.jpg, and I'm going to close out of that. Now, one last thing. We've got our graphics here. We can create this. We can create this in CSS, or we can, we can grab it as an image. But we'll create it in CSS for fun. Actually, I lied. Let's take that whole thing as an image, just for the sake of showing you how to do that. So I'm going to select this layer here. I believe it is home rectangle. Isolate that layer. Okay, so I'm not going to isolate that. I want to select everything. So I'm actually going to highlight these two layers by holding Shift. Hit the group, the folder group little icon down here. And I'm just going to select these, drag them in that group. I'm going to rename that group to button. Now I can isolate that folder. Perfect. Make a selection, just a big wide one. Copy merged, edit, copy merged, put everything back. New Photoshop document, paste that background. We don't want that white background there, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete the layer. And then save it as a PNG because we have the transparent corners there. I'm going to say that as button-background. There we go. We have our background image, logo, and the button. Now let's jump over into our code editor here. I have brackets open. For those of you who've been using brackets along with me for the past while, hopefully you've been liking. I've been certainly liking brackets. And now, basically what I want to do is I just want to start creating everything here in HTML. First thing I'm going to do, though, is just add the basic text. So we have the markup done and out of the way. So what do we have here? We have a logo, and then we have a nav, home, store, about, contact. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add where the logo will go. So I'm going to add an A tag. In the A tag, this is a pretty search engine friendly way of doing kind of a logo within a link here. It's very simple. You literally just have the A tag, the image. You want this to be an image because if someone had their styles disabled, which they can do that, screen readers and certain browsers may disable the styles. You want to maintain the branding of the site, and the logo is probably the most important part of branding. It's the identity, the visual identity in a logo. And so you don't want to lose that. If you were just to use this as a background image, then you'd lose that because background images are CSS. So img/logo.png, alt, this will just say MNML logo for screen readers and visually impaired users. And now what we'll do is in here, you just put a / that links to the root of the site. So when you click on the logo, and you see this with a lot of websites, when you click on a logo, it takes you back to the home page. That's kind of a common convention. And this takes you back to the home page. This means the root of the site, the first kind of top level root. Okay, so here we have our logo, and now we want to put an unordered list in here. And I'm going to copy this combination here 4 times. I believe that's how many we have in our design. Yes, home, store, about, contact, and let's just add that text in between the A tag here. So we'll say home, store, about, and then contact. And, if you had the pages there, you could feel free to code those up, and you would, in your own design, you'd have more pages. This is where you'd add the links, about.html, so on and so forth. Okay, so we have our nav. We sell beach toys seriously. Okay, so level 1 heading. I'm going to say we sell beach toys. And then strong. I believe that's how it works. It's actually the other way around. So I'm going to actually say emphasis, and then we'll style that accordingly later. Seriously. Great. And then we have our button. The text is browse the shop, so we'll just say browse the shop. And in the footer, very simple, we'll just add a paragraph tag down here, and it's the copyright HTML entity. Well, not in here, but that we'll use that, copyright 2015. So let's say copyright, and then the copyright symbol, 2015, MNML Beach Toys. believe that's how it is. Yep. Great. So now if we save this and we check this out in our browser, we should have a very, very ugly little website. Perfect. But it's semantic. We got our logo up here. You could see kind of the outline. Home store, about, contact, we sell beach toys, seriously, browse the shop, and copyright. There it is. It's so simple. Now let's make it look good.